with other crows. Learn more about these devil splicers. She nodded, a small smile on her face, and left the chamber. Varix had allowed himself a moment of silent contemplation, looking at the now closed door to the information suite. As always, it was lit only by the light of the dozen or so monitors in the room. The fallen interlocked his upper hands. He bowed his head as he allowed himself to really feel the impact of that abomination on the screen. He never would have allowed anyone else to see this, but it hurt. Seeing the horror that was Sepix made anew. His people had fallen. Varix stared at the image of Sepix, and, as he'd done before, he wondered what would have gone differently had he been there, among his people. Could he have stopped this before it happened? Could he have found them a better way? Must be a better way for Elixni, he clicked quietly. Must be a way to stop the fall. Oh, that's a cool fucking art piece right there. The servitor in the back, and a captain, and a few drags. A vandal. Oh. And now we have another piece that has Siva shit going on. With the whole fucking consume, enhance, replicate thing. You have a golden bond. Long have we wandered in the blind prison of flesh. Those old lives now a memory, transposed by another. The gift brings pain, yes, but godhood must come at a price. Consume, enhance, replicate. That which we were, we are no more. That which we are is undefined. We make our new selves. We need not machines, because we are machines. Consume, enhance, replicate. What is this complexity? Consume, enhance, replicate. The machine of 1,000 parts, fashioned by a single mind. From where does such complexity arise? What does the creation of a mind require? In the long march of life's procession, order is created from disorder. The rise of complexity is not promised. Such things are not inevitable, and yet here I stand. Consume, enhance, replicate. Consume, enhance, replicate. Life requires death, requires life. All in an unending circle. The expenditure of countless generations, slouching blindly towards uncertain ends, each step forward a mere accident of chance. But this is different. This strange complexity requires only the will to wield it. Consume, enhance, replicate. Life's procession is written in the corpses of those who came before. But here the great chain breaks. Here we step forward, freed from that which always bound us. Here we speak as gods. We are they who created themselves. Consume, enhance, replicate. We are they who created themselves out of themselves and died in the creation. No longer merely the god in the machine, but the machine in the god. Consume, enhance, replicate. Here we rise, made equal at last to that which we worship. Consume, enhance, replicate. To build a species requires epochs, countless pairings and dyings, countless generations. The simplest creature requires geological spans of time to develop, but not machines. Machines are free from such constraints. It is not life that matters, but the building of complexity. Consume, enhance, replicate. Past is connected to the present by only two things: chain reaction and memory. Consume, enhance, replicate. But is not memory just chain reaction? Consume, enhance, replicate. Those memories in my mind are not my own. They belong to a past version of myself, a different being entirely. Consume, enhance, replicate. One who could die. Consume, enhance, replicate. I am that no longer. It rises. I see clearly from its eyes, and breathe with its lungs, and strike with its legs, and kill with its hands. And yet it is not me. Consume, enhance, replicate. I am me, and yet I am it. Consume, enhance, replicate. This is a paradox. Consume, enhance, replicate. My thinking is clear now in ways it never was before. It is my mind that is changed, and yet it is not my mind, but another consciousness that is different from my own. Consume, enhance, replicate. I feel there is a choice to be made, and yet I have made no choice. Consume, enhance, replicate. The choice was made for me. Consume, enhance, replicate. A lot of repetition from Siva in there. Actually, I get it, but at the same time, is it really necessary? We have field reports from Rise of Iron with the mission Quarantine. The Devil Splicer's machine priests have established ritual sites for the study, worship, and proliferation of Siva throughout the Plague Lands. It is unclear if these rituals have a specific purpose, or if they are simply another form of experimentation in Devil Splicer's continuing efforts to understand and control Siva. Interfering with the Splicer ritual could bring about an aggressive response, especially if the priest's acts of worship is ended swiftly and without mercy. Next we have the Archon's Forge. The Archon's Forge is an ancient fallen rite of passage, twisted to utilize Devil Splicer's latest discovery. Fallen seek to improve their station within the Splicer's quickly evolving caste by making offerings of dormant Siva to the Forge. Their worth is then tested in a trial by combat. The offering's quality, fused, enhanced, perfected, determines the severity of the challenge, and, in turn, the level of augmentation the petitioner will be granted should they survive. That a guardian would dare challenge the Forge with offerings of their own is an affront to the Splicers that the Splicers will not take lightly. And yet we kept fucking doing it. And we have the mission, Wrath of the Machine, which is an intercepted fallen signal. Fellow houses, fellow Elixni, we have found the means to apotheosis, to become machines. Siva can make you strong, but we can show you how to wield it, to free yourself from the bonds of ether. Find us in the wasteland and bring us an offering of Siva. In return we will bring you to our chamber of perfection, and we will free you. And we have the mission Axis Archon Prime. That's the name of the fucking boss, Axis. Axis is the fruit of the Devil Splicer's labor. A former Archon priest, Axis has submerged himself in Siva's apotheosis and emerged as Archon Prime. All that he was is gone. His dreams, his hopes, replaced by agency. He has shed his gods and his ether-like skin, and in his uplifted state waits in his perfection complex for offerings of Siva from all fallen. Okay. Then we have what looks like a debrief that was made to Zavala from Salone. Breaking mission top sheet protocol, Commander. I want you to understand the scope of what we're looking at here. As the fire teams fanned out across the region, devils rushed to meet them. Our forces dealt with some post-Siva pockets of Splicer activity, and every once in a while, the kings popped their heads up and scared the hell out of everyone. In other words, situation absolutely normal. That's a lie. The fallen are abandoning the Cosmodrome. Hawk flyovers confirm. The House of Devils forces are simply not there anymore. They've been disorganized for the last few years, but there's never been a shortage of ground troops whenever we stage a significant sortie. Intel source Green Raven was right. And for the moment, it's worth assuming that their report on the House of Exiles, House of Winter, and House of Wolves are also accurate. We're fact-checking against independent fireteam reports from the field. The kid at the asile The kid all the Azrael fans talk about. Marcus, he was in one of the fire teams out at the Cosmodrome. He pulled me aside and said it to me straight. The foreign houses are gone. The siege is broken. The stalemate we've had with the Elixni for what, 100 years? It's over. We won. Commander, I'm not even sure they're flying the banners anymore. The teams found huge mounds of burnt cloth and armor, ceremonial piles, in several of the most hardcore foreign holdouts. What's changed? Where have the fallen gone? Why have they burned their banners? I'm drawing up a plan to coordinate forces from the Queen's Wrath, Fellwinter Peak, and the Warlock Orders, and more non-traditional outfits to follow up on these reports. I believe your wisdom will guide us through the trials ahead. Signed, Sloan. Now we have House of Dusk. The Betrayer Prince spoke the words of the last Kell, and the fallen burned their banners. A drag watched his people die in piles of red, blue, and green. The last of the Elixni was scraps of cloth alight in bright tongues of flame. Rain and scar and stone were dust. The kings bent the knee. The exiles knew nothing but hate. Too many devils rejected the way of ether to embrace the hateful red cloud that twisted and shaped them. The walls were lost with their Kell Queen. Winter was as silent as snow. There was no judgment. The drag remembered the stories of the Elixni. How proud his people had been eons ago. They explored the stars. Their catches landed on many worlds and claimed them for their own. They built cities that shone in the glow of a dozen suns. Then the great machine came. It offered everything, and it took more. It disappeared in a whirlwind, and it left despair and ashes. The shining cities fell. His people had followed the great machine across the universe, beseeching it to see them once more. They had tried again and again to take it from its hateful new children, but it would not speak to them. Cold ether hissed where once there had been warmth. Now the banners were burning. The drake looked up at the night sky, brilliant with stars, but saw only the space between. It was beautiful. The fallen would have no more Kells. Only the lowest of the low could lead them. They would scavenge and steal and claim the scraps that were their due. Their banners would flag the symbol of the space between. There was no light for the Elixni, only dusk. Interesting. Now we have quite a bit of reading with the Baron of Shanks, which has to do with Callus and an Elixni who was a shadow of Callus. Interesting. Have a drink real quick. It is the eve of our mission to end the life of Dominus Gaul. The shadows are ready, but Michael Callus, ever mindful, demands one more record for posterity. This is a story I have told him over and over. He has cried laughing at it. I do not share his love of it, but he is Michael, so I shall tell it one last time. Before I was a shadow of Callus, I called myself Baron. Of what? Nothing, really. I am not special among my people. My generation was born of the whirlwind. We are, all of us, misers. And misers learn very quickly to show strength or die. Even false strength is better than nothing. So I was Baron of Shanks. My specialty was and is in the design and armament of Shanks. My house and I made our den at the edge of the system. We hope to be as far from the war against humanity as possible. It found us anyway, or rather, he did. The saint, the violet king of humanity's last city. the fiercest of all those called Titan, along with 5 other lights. They attacked our settlement in the night and razed it in a matter of hours. The saint was on what his people call a crusade. He hunted all iniquity across the system, and today it was our turn. By the time I was awake, I was one of the last few left. By the time I had activated defensive schemata hidden across our encampment, I was the only one. I watched from the shadow in my stealth skin as my army of shanks tore 5 lights apart. And when, to my amazement, the lights stood up, I set my shanks to an interminable setting. For as long as the lights stood, my shanks would not stop firing. Their arcs cannons sang into the night. I was a miser, but I built my shanks well. That left only the saint, and somehow he could smell me. He knew something, or someone guided the shanks. He hunted me, and I ran until we reached my final refuge, a bunker I constructed as a last resort. Not for the first time in my life, my people were all dead. I had nothing left to lose. I made certain to wait for the furious amethyst divider on his helmet to appear in the distance before I entered the bunker. I wanted him to follow me, and he did, along with his shank, through a battery of web grenades and proximity charges. He finally cornered me inside the bunker, shining armor dented and blackened. The divider on his helm glowed an angry purple, the light around him a sizzling void. Up close, the saint was a freakish thing, its grace belied in its size. It hurtled forward with the armor of a walker and the speed of an arc bolt. Even its movements had movements. I scrambled backwards, tilting my head back to avoid a slash from his boiling void shield. I could hear my own breath as the conjured metal sizzled just past my throat and came back around for another slice as it missed. I ducked. He knew I would, and his knee found my face, cracking the heads-up display in my helm and sending me reeling back. 3 strikes in the space it took me to process a single one. My odds to finish this fight were poor, but I had him. As I stumbled back, bleeding from several open wounds in my face under the helm, I keyed a control on my waist rake. A barrier blurred to life between us as the blade of the saint's shield cracked against the space in front of my eyes and bounced back with a ringing clang. I blinked and stepped back. He stopped too, to survey his surroundings. He was stuck. The barrier kept him from advancing, and the switch on my belt had shut and locked the plasteel doors behind him. I sat back, exhausted, ether and blood dribbling from my face beneath my helmet. Gunfire rang out in the distance. We stared at each other across the light of the barrier. In those days, I spoke only the language of my people, but I had once stolen a glossator from a house judgment in the event that diplomacy with our earthborn successors was necessary. I wished I had the chance to use it before the killing began. I spoke anyway. This is an approximation of what was said, recounted from memory and edited for clarity. The glossator is imperfect. Your comrades are still fighting to stand. I did not know the light could bring you back from the brink. I had heard rumors from other houses. I had not believed them. The saint's boiling shield dissolved into the air. He stared at me with the expressionless eyes of his helmet. It is the quintessential gift of the light. Your people held it before. What did the traveler gift you? Many things, I lied. I had no idea. Secrets lost to time, hidden in half-truths. He took a moment to think. What do you hope to accomplish here? He asked for a moment. I have questions, I replied. What would you like to know? The Battle of 6 Fronts, the sieges at Boyle Pass, the breaking of the weapons of rain. You have done so much. So I've been told. Everyone asks about those days. What do they ask? They ask how I did it. I laughed. It made me bleed and I winced. That is not what I would ask. What would you ask? Why? I would ask why. The expressionless plasteel face stared down at me. What gave you the right? I said. If you saw what your people have done on my world, you would know, he replied. The great machine. Do you commune with it? I asked. To this he did not respond. Reality bent with a warbling shriek as his shield reappeared in his hand. He started to look for a way out, scanning the corners of the room and the barrier projection systems. I think I can kill you, I said as I watched him. The saint said nothing and continued his survey of the chamber. Your shank came in here with you. It is hidden now, but I saw it. It is the key to your light, is it not? There are enough explosives under us to tear a walker apart. Try it, he said, looking at the ceiling. Kill us both. You'll do my work for me. My friend will be safe. He stopped. He had found no way out. We stared at each other across the barrier. What are you waiting for? He asked. I thought about it. I found I could not do it, given the choice. Out of fear? Indignation? Perhaps both. I thought I had nothing to lose. I was wrong. Do you think, I said slowly, that if I allowed you to leave, the great machine would bless us again? The saint did not respond. It loves you, does it not? The gunfire of my shanks echoed faintly outside. I keyed a switch on my waist rig and the barrier came down. The doors unlocked. Outside, my shanks ceased firing. The saint stared down at me through the dented, blackened helm. He left. I assume he convinced his friends to leave too. I keep watch on him through the vast Cabal battle net. He has contributed to lead many successful campaigns against my people. And the archive note is that Secris, Baron of Shank, perished in the assassination attempt on Dominus Gaul, unfortunately. But now we get to Chapter 8, Assimilation. The first part being Death to Kells. What is a Kell to a spider? Avrock knew Kells. He had never spoken to one, had never even been on the same battlefield as one. But as a twice dark drag of House King, oh, how he knew Kells. Kells were stronger, faster, smarter. In other words, they had better resources, ate better, slept safer, lived longer. They were like guardians in that way. Avrock had enough of both. He stopped bringing all his salvage to his captain. They didn't notice. And if they did, it's not like they could have cut his ether rations anymore without killing him. Nothing left to lose. He built his ship piece by piece in a gully far away from prying eyes. When the awoken prince arrived, he knew destruction when he saw one. While the Kell mocked his newest prisoner, Avrock made his escape. He flew his ship to the tangled shore. Starving and weak, he stood before the one they called the Spider, offered his ship as a sign of his goodwill. Spider rubbed his chin, an alien gesture. What is it called, your ship? Avrock lifted his chin, looked Spider directly in the eyes. Death to Kells. Spider hired him on the spot. So that's where that ship comes from. That's cool. Next part is Ether Doctor with the Spider. Here is my offer. The Spider folds both sets of arms over his thorax, leans back in his throne. For the martially inclined, bodyguards, enforcers and such, I will provide 1 kilogram of ether for 1 day's work. By day, I mean half of 1 30-hour cycle. That's the schedule I keep. If you suffer an injury in my services, you will still be paid for your days of recovery. Sibilant murmurs of surprise echo around the spider's chamber. The dregs and vandals gathered before him are trying to figure out the catch. Spider allows himself a luxuriant smile. For those who prefer a more freelance lifestyle, you will find me an enthusiastic collector of salvage and secrets. My prices are posted on the local network. In the last 40 orbits, I have changed them twice. He pauses to let the elixir tune into his network, let the prices sink in. The hisses of joy are even louder this time. You are used to competing for the favor of your Kel. Let me make one thing clear. I am no Kel, and I do not waste my favor on you. Honor your side of the deal, and I shall honor mine. No more, no less. Now. Spider clasps his hands, relishing in the thoroughly human uselessness of the gesture. Get to work. Good old Spider. Next is the right side of wrong. This may be the best deal Spider has ever made, and that, he reminds himself, is saying a lot. In exchange for facilitating the deaths of his enemies, Spider receives death for some other enemies. It's almost embarrassing. He would have provided the Baron's location for free if they had pressed him on it, but why offer anything for free? And any Guardian had to admit, the Barons were much, much worse for the shore than the humble Spider. When he had his territory back, and everyone would benefit. Profit all around. All in all, he feels delightfully magnanimous. Yes, this will be a wonderful friendship indeed. Oh, this should be interesting. An evolution of faith, which is a text about Fickrul, which we are dealing with on this episode in Destiny. Fickrul was an Archon. Then Fickrul took a fall, beaten, dogged, and banished for heresies against Elixir faith. He should have died, alone and starved of precious ether. He did not. Instead, he found kin in the form of 7 scorned. With them, he found purpose and power. As their legend grew, he found believers in new truths. His banishment was not penance, it was reward for his convictions, for his courage. Fickrul, the crazed fanatic. Fickrul, the heretic Archon who spoke against the very faith he once held dear, scorned and forgotten, but only for so long. Fickrul was a drag. Before his banishment, before his clarity of purpose, Fickrul was a celebrated leader of fallen faith and a savior to those who embraced his teaching. Archons had long been elevated in fallen society, but their stature grew, and their role shifted following the whirlwind. As aspiration took hold and the last of the fallen raced across the stars in search of salvation, their dependence on machines evolved into a deep-rooted need. Their weapons to fight,